I just tell the truth, and telling the truth is crazy in a world full of lies. If you mix brilliance with bravery, that we can ignite something. Even this conversation alone can ignite the people.
The time is now to express and for people to believe in themselves. The time is now for it to be okay to be great. People in this world shun people for being great, for being a bright color, for standing out. But the time is now to be okay to be the greatest you.
Hey guys, what's up? It's your girl Kelly, and we're back again with another video for you guys. Thank you so much for clicking on my channel and on this video. My name's Kelly, and if you're new here, I hope you'll hit that subscribe button and join me on this channel. If you're into things like true crime, politics, news, and culture, that would be amazing. And if you're returning, then you guys already know. Thank you for being a friend, and I appreciate you so much. And guys, I just also want to say, let me know what you guys think, and like the video if you like it, comment, all that good stuff. Let's get into this content that we're about to deliver right here and now, though. So we're doing another Would You Rather video, and I just stumbled across this one because somebody mentioned one of these situations in my comments the other day, and I looked it up and I thought it was interesting. And then, of course, we're going to get into the other situation. So we're talking about two less well-known government organizations. I'm sure some of you might have heard of one or both of these. But if you haven't, we're going to get into some of the shady business that our government is they're just well known for, guys. They want, two things they're good at doing is fucking up our money and fucking up our lives. So here we are. So we're going to talk about FEMA today, and we're going to talk about BLM, not the not the more recent BLM, okay? No, they're some copycats, really, if you want to ask me. We're talking about the Bureau of Land Management. So let's get into it, guys. We're going to start off with FEMA, and I want to know what you guys think about all of this, because this was an interesting topic. These are two lesser talked about bureaus, but these two alphabet groups are just as important to talk about as the other more well-known and more corrupt agencies that we normally get into on this channel. So let's go ahead and start with FEMA, and one of the most well-known fuck-ups of FEMA's time, and I'm sorry guys, I've already said the F-bomb like 5 times, sorry for the language ahead of time, but one of their more well-known disasters they were in charge of was none other than Hurricane Katrina. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? I definitely remember Hurricane Katrina because I'm from Louisiana, and this happened, I think I was in high school. I'm not 100, wait, was I in high school? I don't know. But I remember this very well, and I know I was in school. I wasn't living in Louisiana at the time, but I remember it very well. And if you are a millennial baby, then you will know what I'm talking about. So I want to show you guys this video. This was just some footage from the hurricane that happened. This just to kind of like set it off for you guys, and then we'll get into some of the ways that our government royally effed this up, okay? So let's watch this video first.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a test. There's a major hurricane that is in the Gulf of Mexico.
This fucking loser. That guy was the mayor.
The winds have really picked up here significantly over the last half hour or so.
The worst of the storm has now reached New Orleans. This is the moment we've been talking about, dreading.
And I'm wondering how long these levees are going to hold on Lake Pontchartrain.
Really? Oh, wow.
The city absolutely devastated by Katrina.
I'm told that the New Orleans police put out a call to all its officers saying, if you have a boat, bring it here, help us. These are people who did not have the wherewithal to get out of town. They didn't have cars. There's no way they could pay for a hotel room. They stayed in their houses.
So, guys, just what do y'all think so far? I mean, this was like a horrific tragedy that happened, and this happens a lot. We've talked about this before with the whole East Palestine disaster that recently happened with the train derailing. When we have these natural disasters, or even these man-made disasters, whatever, when we have these sorts of emergency situations, and you have poor people, extremely poor people, and a lot of times, I'm not doing the, like, woke diversity shit, but, like, a lot of times, what you do find is poor black people or even like, you know, poor Hispanics, poor whites, whatever. But it is poor people that are left stuck holding the bag, and a lot of times that end up, you know, either losing their lives or losing everything that they owned, even if it wasn't much, because they cannot get out of these places. So when you have things like hurricanes and they order evacuations on those cities, and people wonder, well, why didn't people leave? Why don't people just get out? People can't afford it. People quite literally cannot get out because they have nowhere to go. They don't have family in that area to stay with. They don't have money for a hotel or food. They literally cannot go anywhere. So this is what happened to so many different people, and it was just completely horrific what they had to go through. I mean, if y'all don't remember like in some of these areas, the water was up to the house, like it was up to the roof of the house. So if you have, like, think about if you have like old people, you know, disabled people who cannot easily get up and down stairs or even to like high points in the house. Think of like somebody who is wheelchair bound. I mean, if they're poor and in a wheelchair, I mean, my God, it's really horrific to think about. And these were the people that were devastated the most. And so it makes you wonder, like, if we know that these things are going to happen, why aren't extra measures like put in place to help those with disabilities or like elderly people? I mean, I get it, like with the hurricane stuff, you really don't have a ton of time, and you don't want to just evacuate cities for no reason, but it's like this ends up being a huge tragedy for the people that have the least in most cases in society.
Because they had to, and then the water came up. This is life and death. This is life and death. There's just no doubt about it.
I understand.
Sorry, y'all. Sorry.
The anxiety of people on the ground. I just can't imagine what it's like to be waving a sign that says, "Come and get me now."
It says sorry.
But I be waving a sign that says, "Come and get me now."
It says we need ice, gas, water, and food. And it says, "We love you, Jesus." The Crafts family need gas, ice, water. And this is what somebody wrote on top of their house, because they were just stuck there basically, and they needed a way to get a message to all the people that ended up coming, you know, like, but they came a little too late in most cases.
But I want people to know there's a lot of help coming.
Oh, really?
You know, maybe help is on the way. The immediate situation is with each passing hour, the situation gets more dire.
The government said, you go in that Superdome and you'll get help, and they didn't get help. They got locked in.
That Superdome, guys, that's what he's talking about there. That was one of the biggest tragedies of all. They put all of these people into this Superdome. And we found out about this like later after this all happened. But like the Superdome is like the New Orleans Saints, you know, where they play football or whatever. So it's like the big stadium, the big arena in New Orleans. And it's in the middle of the city. And they brought all of these people to the Superdome. There was all kinds of debaucherous shit going. I mean, people said it was like Sodom and Gomorrah in that bitch. Like, it was like hell. There was all kind of like, you know, poor, smelly, restless people in there. There was like, you know, people who was like doing all kinds of shit. I just heard horror stories from that Superdome. And you can kind of get a glimpse of that in this picture. Like, look at this man with his shirt off. And this, like, imagine the smell, guys. Just imagine it.
There was no power, air conditioning, water. Thousands were stranded in wretched conditions.
I want to thank Senator Frist and Senator Reid for their extraordinary efforts.
To listen to politicians thanking each other and complimenting each other, you know, I got to tell you, there are a lot of people here who are very upset.
I want everyone in the world to see 6 days after Katrina swept through the city, 5 days after the levee collapsed, look in the face of the baby.
So many of these people, almost all of them that we see, are so poor and they are so black.
They're showing all these reports of people.
What? I'm sorry, they were what? Hang on. They were what now?
So poor and they are so black.
They're showing all these reports.
Okay, I thought that's what you said. They were, okay.
Of people looting, and they are doing that. But people are desperate.
Destruction of the spirit of the people of southern Louisiana and Mississippi may end up being the most tragic loss of all.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
You know what? You know what? It was the one shining, glimmering moment through all of the tragedy and loss and through all of the just disappointment we all felt with our government, guys. At least we got this moment for the culture from Ye. You know, God bless him. And it's so true. It's so true. George Bush doesn't care about black people. I mean, it's true.
The aftermath of Hurricane Katrina will go down as one of the worst abandonments of Americans on American soil ever in U.S. history.
You need to know that our whole nation cares about you.
Oh, really?
And in the journey ahead, you're not alone.
Over 1,800 people died in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina in 2005. So after the evacuation, New Orleans' population was reduced by half. And then 10 years later, it's 80% of what it once was. And it's about 50% like in what it's worth these days, because New Orleans, if you know anything about it now, it is in piss poor condition. The upkeep of that city, the morale of that city, the crime in that city has just gone to shit, honestly. So it's really a tragedy what happened to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and it hasn't bounced back since then, really. I would go on to say that it has never bounced back since that situation. So basically, after the storm happened, you know, what I gathered was that George Bush, being the retard that he is, you know, he didn't realize, I guess, how bad it was. They said, so, according to one source, it said that he never really watched the news or read anything. He was just, because he didn't, supposedly they said, because he didn't want to, like, have influence from, like, the mainstream media, but, like, I think it was just because he was illiterate and idiotic. But that was the case with George Bush, and it just was a whole lot of politicians who were slow to react. The mayor did not order a mandatory evacuation until, I think, maybe at all, or if he did, it was very, very, very late in the game. And then the governor at the time, she was a complete failure. There was just failures all the way around, and they were slow moving to get aid to these people. They packed them in the Superdome. There was one instance where there was people who were on a bridge, who were basically taking cover on a bridge, and the cops came around and shot and killed at least one of them, maybe not two, and then ended up having to go on trial later on for that instance. It was just a hot ass mess. So I just want to read you guys a couple of the most appalling aspects of the federal response to Katrina. And let's see. Here are some of those. So FEMA reportedly blocked the delivery of emergency supplies ordered by the Methodist Hospital in New Orleans from its out-of-state headquarters. FEMA turned away doctors volunteering their services at emergency facilities. Methodist Sister Hospital, Chalmette, for example, sent doctors to the emergency facility set up at a New Orleans airport to offer their services, but they were turned away because their names were not on any government database. Wow. Private medical air transport companies played an important role in evacuations after Katrina, but FEMA officials provided no help in coordinating those services, and they actively blocked some of the flights. FEMA refused Amtrak's offer to evacuate victims and wouldn't return calls from the American Bus Association. Indeed, both the Motor Coach Association and the American Bus Association could not get through to anyone at FEMA to offer help for evacuations. The Red Cross was denied access to the Superdome in New Orleans to deliver emergency services. FEMA turned away trucks from Walmart loaded with water for New Orleans, and it prevented the Coast Guard from delivering diesel fuel. And offers of emergency supplies, vehicles, and specialized equipment from other nations were caught in federal red tape, and shipments were delayed. So, just great. You know, great job, guys. And FEMA is the type of organization that basically, you know, it's a bureaucracy, like, true to its core. So it's a useless thing that our government has put into place, and because it's not often used, there are times when you don't hear about FEMA for a couple of years, you know, like, because we don't have a big huge disaster, and so I think they get complacent, maybe. I don't know. I just think they're useless, honestly, if you ask me. I don't think they should exist. I think that in these circumstances, we need to revert back to our states, and we have, you know, we had the National Guard, and then we also have like the state, whatever the state version of that is, like I forget what it's called, but yeah, like I mean, why are we? Because there's a chain of command is what you have to understand. So like the governor has to ask the president to get FEMA involved, and then the president so there's like, instead of just like springing into action, they have to go through these steps and these processes, and then it works the same way backwards. So then FEMA gets to the scene, they arrive, and then they have to like disperse the aid, but they have to do it in a way that like everything's documented. You have to go through these processes, you have to fill out these applications. It's like, it can never just be like, help these damn people. So it's just ridiculous, honestly. It truly was a huge failure. There was all kinds of different, you know, different things that came into play. Like some of the federal failures were confusion. Key federal officials were not proactive. Failure to learn. The government was unprepared for Katrina, even though it was widely known that a hurricane was probable, and weather forecasters had accurately predicted the advance of Katrina before landfall. A year prior to Katrina, government agencies had performed a simulation. Oh, really? I didn't know this. Okay, wow. A year prior to Katrina, government agencies had performed a simulation exercise, Hurricane Pam, for a hurricane of similar strength hitting New Orleans. But governments failed to learn important lessons from the exercise. Isn't that hilariously coincidental, guys? I mean, what a crazy world we're living in. Do you guys not remember right before the pandemic hit, when they had like the same type of like drill or like operation where they like all got together and they were like, oh, let's see what happens if there's like a global pandemic, and let's just see what the government response is going to be. And then a year later it happened. Isn't that weird how that happens? Almost like they know what is going to occur. But that's crazy, right? I mean, nobody would think that. So, and then also another thing with this was the failure to learn thing. They knew, the city of New Orleans, you know, the state of New Orleans, I mean, the state of Louisiana, and our federal government all knew and were aware of the state of the levees in that city, which, if you guys don't know anything about New Orleans, a lot of it sits like to where it's below sea level. And so all throughout the city, there are these levees where the water is like, you know, kind of higher than where the houses and the neighborhoods are located. So they have these levees to help, you know, basically acts like a dam between the water and the neighborhoods. And the levees broke during the storm, which was the main cause of all of the destruction that happened. It wasn't really the storm that caused what happened to New Orleans to happen. It was the levees breaking. Now, there were some conspiracy theories that said that the government bombed these levees, which they had also done in 1927. Look that up if you guys want to look further into it. But there was a lot of people that were saying that the levees were bombed and that this was done on purpose to try to affect and to kill the poor people in these areas. But I don't know. You guys, y'all need to look that one up yourselves, because that's a whole other topic and I don't want to go into a tailspin. Okay, we still have one more thing to talk about. So I'm going to move on, but I'm going to link this article in the description down below. So I did want to, before we get off of FEMA, touch on one last thing, and that is FEMA concentration camps, guys. Have you heard of this? Let's watch this, or a little bit of this one little video, and then we're going to get into the conspiracy of the FEMA concentration camps.
American citizens have generated a lot of interest around the country in locating the potential prison camps throughout the country. These may be facilities currently being used as prisons, such as those you saw earlier, or prisons that are being built supposedly in the name of the war on drugs, or facilities that have other uses but which could be quickly used to detain large numbers of people, such as this Amtrak facility in Beech Grove, Indiana. We're standing now in the main parking lot, which doesn't look too sinister. At this level, it is a very large parking lot, fenced on all sides by fence topped by barbed wire. It also has these electronically operated turnstiles. There is also a surveillance camera, just like we saw at the FEMA facility, pointing out to the parking lot, and a helicopter windsock. All of these apparent security measures are particularly unusual here, because this is a very low crime area, and this facility is nothing but an old train repair station with nothing in it worth stealing. In this portion of the parking lot is a brick building, suitable for processing, next to a gate that leads right out to the railroad tracks. And all of this is contained inside a fully fenced area, now 3 layers deep in fence.
Oh my god, not reminiscent of Auschwitz, bitch. Okay, so what do y'all think about that, guys? There's a lot of information or conspiracy theories on these camps. Okay, especially when it came to everything that was happening with COVID. You know, a lot of people were talking about, you know, what are they gonna do? They're gonna take the unjabbed to these places, you know, for quarantine purposes and all this stuff that we saw in other countries. But it's an interesting thing. There is a whole entire list of these different places, and it's broken down by like states and where they located, and all of this interesting information. So if you guys are interested, definitely look more into it. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, and let's move on to BLM. Not the new BLM, but the old BLM. This is the one that I'm sure most of you are not familiar with. I'm barely familiar with it. I had heard of it before, but it's just a bureau that does not really do much of anything, but basically watch over land, okay? Land that they really don't have any right to. So let's see. What is the Bureau of Land Management? It is an agency in the U.S. Department of the Interior, and it has 1 in every 10 acres of land in the country is managed by them. And 30% of the nation's minerals are also managed by this agency. So pretty big deal, okay? They manage also things like overseeing outdoor recreation, controlling livestock grazing, governing mineral development, managing energy production, and it extends to all public federal lands. So let's see what else I want to tell y'all. So they manage 245 million acres. And so basically they're just useless, but they've gotten into some scuffles, into some controversies throughout their years, and it's quite interesting because it's kind of like the ATF, where basically they think they have more power than they do, and they go in and they try to like enforce things on people that they really shouldn't, because they're probably fucking bored half the time. So 2 such circumstances were basically in 2014 and 2016, and this is what somebody had left in my comments the other day, so thank you, shout out to you if you're watching this. So we had actually this one came first, the Bundy standoff, okay? So in 2014, excuse me guys, Cliven Bundy and law enforcement, following a 21-year legal dispute in which the United States BLM obtained court orders directing Bundy to pay over $1 million in withheld grazing fees for Bundy's use of federally owned and adjacent to Bundy's ranch in southeastern Nevada. So basically he was allowing his cows to graze like on adjacent land to his. So his land was right next to this quote unquote federally owned land, and who comes and like puts the dividers and the markers, and who says that, like, oh, your cow just ate like one piece of grass from my land, and that'll be $100, you know? Just like the government to come in and try to like nickel and dime you, okay? When really all this man's trying to do is let a damn cow graze on his land. He can't control where the cow goes. Are you guys gonna fence in all of this area that y'all supposedly own and manage? No, because that would cost money, right? So this is basically the gist of what happened. There was a huge standoff in 2014, and this became a huge dispute basically between like sovereign citizen type of, you know, or just anti-government type of individuals that were against the BLM owning and operating these lands, when really it was argued that they should go back to the states if, and at any given time the somebody wants to make use of those lands, or if they want to purchase those lands, then technically it should be up to the state and not the Federal Bureau of Land Management. Yeah, just an complete overreach basically. So let's see, the ongoing dispute started in 1993 when, in protest against changes in grazing rules, Bundy declined to renew his permit for cattle grazing on BLM administered public lands near Bunkerville, Nevada. According to Bundy, the federal government lacks the constitutional authority to own vast tracts of land, an argument repeatedly rejected by federal courts. According to the BLM, Bundy continued to graze his cattle on public lands without a permit. And then in 1998, he was prohibited by the U.S. District Court from grazing his cattle on an area of land later called the Bunkerville Allotment. In 2013, a federal judge ordered Bundy to refrain from trespassing on federally administered land in the Gold Butte area of Clark County. Cliven and his son, Ammon Bundy, and their supporters have claimed that the federal government lacks the authority to manage public lands. These arguments have been repeatedly rejected by legal scholars and federal courts, including the U.S. Supreme Court. The Property Clause of the United States Constitution grants plenary authority to Congress to manage federal property, including land. But really, okay, you can say that he doesn't really lack, or he doesn't really have a case, or that they can control these lands, or whatever it is that the courts have decided. But like, what are they really doing? Like, what are they really arguing? It's not like he's loading up his cattle, bringing them to a land that that the federal government owns and has like barricaded or like fenced in, and then just unloading them and letting them graze there, and then bringing them back to his property. I'm sure these are just like cows that might meander onto his from his land onto the federal government's land, but it's not something that like is on purpose. And like I said, I feel like the onus should be on the federal government to put up barriers. If they don't want that land to be trespassed on, it should not be up to the farmer to stop his cattle from grazing, which is what they're naturally inclined to do. So that's just my thought. And then after 2014, a more serious incident happened where an armed group of far-right extremists, by the way, seized and occupied the headquarters of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge in Harney County, Oregon, and continued to occupy it until law enforcement made a final arrest on February 11, 2006. So the leader of this protest was Ammon Bundy, who was the same guy that we just talked about, the main guy's son, and he participated in the Bundy standoff at his father's Nevada ranch. So the organizers were seeking an opportunity to advance their view that the federal government is constitutionally required to turn over most of the federal public land they manage to the individual states. In particular, land managed by the BLM, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, and the United States Forest Service, and other agencies. So the militants believed they could do this by protesting the treatment of two area ranchers convicted of federal land arson who they believe were wrongly convicted. So basically what happened was on February 11th, all the militants had surrendered or withdrawn except for a handful of them, one of these being Robert Lavoy Finicum. He was shot and killed during an attempt to be arrested. So I want to show you guys the video and let y'all see for yourselves and see if you guys think that this man was shot basically with cause or without cause. And they said that it was because he almost hit a FBI agent and he was, he was reaching for something in his pocket. But don't you know what they always say? Like, isn't that what they fucking always just say? So this was the video, and just before I start, I'm going to just warn you guys, viewer discretion is advised. You're not going to see anything crazy because it's filmed from a like a high point, basically, so you're not really gonna see anything, but just in case, viewer discretion is advised. Let's get into the video now. Hang on, make sure it's gonna start from the beginning because y'all know how they do. Good Lord, CNN. Okay, here we go.
As the truck approaches the roadblock, there is a spike strip across the road, but it appears Finicum missed it as he attempted to drive around the roadblock. He nearly hits an FBI agent as he maneuvers to the left. The truck gets stuck in the snowbank. Finicum leaves the truck and steps through the snow. Agency troopers on scene had information that Finicum and others would be armed. On at least 2 occasions, Finicum reaches his right hand toward a pocket on the left inside portion of his jacket.
Holy
he
shit.
did have a
Okay, so he came out with his hands raised, but they said that he was exclaiming, shoot me then, and he wasn't going to prison and all this shit. I don't know. It seems kind of sketchy. This was a dispute over federal lands, and a man ended up dead over it. It just seems very, very convenient, that this would happen. And it's very reminiscent of the Ruby Ridge standoff and just these federal government agencies coming in, trying to do an overreach completely. In this circumstance, this was about a protest that's happening, and it just got out of hand, and this man ended up dead. So I don't know. In the video, it does look like he might have been like tugging at his jacket or reaching for something, but obviously, like, he had his hands up. I just don't know. I don't know, guys. What do y'all think about all of this? Please let me know in the comments down below, and like the video if you enjoyed it. That would mean so much to me. It would really help my channel out, guys, to get more views. And if you could hit that subscribe button, that would be lovely. So I appreciate you guys so much, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And yeah, guys, until next time, I will see y'all later. Okay, bye.
I just tell the truth, and telling the truth is crazy in a world full of lies. If you mix brilliance with bravery, that we can ignite something. Even this conversation alone can ignite the people.
The time is now to express and for people to believe in themselves. The time is now for it to be okay to be great. People in this world shun people for being great, for being a bright color, for standing out. But the time is now to be okay to be the greatest you.